good afternoon, or good evening, or greetings for whatever time of day you're watching this, I guess. Today, I wanted to talk all about hormones. According to pituitary.org, there are over 200 hormones at work in the human body. We will not be talking about all of those today, but I do think that it is important to talk about a few that are going to be associated with fertility. I think we should talk about the hormones that your reproductive endocrinologist will have tested if you are prepping for an egg retrieval or if you are just trying to find out where your fertility stands. Now, of course, every doctor is different, every person is different, but these are just the tests that my reproductive endocrinologist ran on me, and these are the tests that I would expect other reproductive endocrinologists would want to run on their patients in blood work. So, we will first be talking about LH and FSH. LH stands for luteinizing hormone, and FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. They are both produced in the brain by the pituitary gland, and they both kind of function in the same way. They work synergistically together. What they do is they spike and trigger your body to ovulate an egg. These hormones are typically measured in milli-international units per milliliter. I know that's a lot. Normal LH is about 1.3 to 9 milli-international units per milliliter. And that's when you are in the follicular phase of your menstrual cycle. Normal FSH during that time of the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle is 1.5 to 10. My LH was 2.9 and my FSH was 8. So both of those are normal. Great. Estradiol is a type of estrogen, and how it acts, it also works with luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone to control the menstrual cycle. But what is different about estradiol is that along with all that other stuff, it also works to thicken the lining of the uterus to allow for implantation of a fertilized egg. The egg, now an embryo, has to be able to stick to the uterine lining to be able to get enough nutrients and grow and be a successful pregnancy. Estradiol, to my knowledge, is usually measured in picograms per milliliter. And my most recent estradiol was, the test came back as less than 20. So that's just an example of how it's measured. And estradiol should be at least below 50 during the follicular phase of the menstrual cycle. Now, the last hormone I want to talk about is the big one, and that is AMH. You might recognize that from the first video that I did. AMH is anti-Mullerian hormone. The anti-Mullerian hormone determines your ovarian reserve. Ovarian reserve refers to the capacity of the ovary to be able to produce oocytes, which are just egg cells, the ability to produce egg cells to be able to be fertilized and become a healthy pregnancy. Later on, if you are pregnant, AMH will help to form the fetus's reproductive tissue. Now today we'll just be talking about AMH related to fertility testing. AMH is measured usually in nanograms per microliter, and like all the other hormones we've talked about, and like many hormones in the human body, AMH fluctuates a lot during someone's life. So something interesting that you might not have known before, females are born with all of their eggs, which is about 1 to 2 million eggs. So if you give birth to a female, she's got 1 to 2 million eggs ready to go. Well, not really ready to go. She has the eggs and the capability in the future to be able to reproduce. By the age of 10, females have about 500,000 eggs. So that's dwindled down from 1 to 2 million to 500,000. And by the age of 30, females have only about 100,000 eggs left. And then by age 60, practically no eggs left. Now there are anomalies of pregnant 60-year-olds, but they're on their own journey doing their best. That's not what we're going to be talking about today. An AMH of under 1 indicates a diminished ovarian reserve. If you're about 40 or 45 years old, your AMH will be about 1. I have an AMH of 0.62. So by the time I'm 30 something and ready to have children, my ovaries will think that they are 60 years old. Weird. I remember that AMH was one of the big numbers that I was waiting to get back. I remember being super anxious to get that number back because I knew how important it was and it would tell me about my ovarian reserve. I remember the day that I got my AMH results back, the night actually. It was 10 o'clock at night about, and I had just gotten home from volunteering at the fire station, sat down at a fire on our back porch that my mom had going from earlier. I was sitting at the fire and opened the message in my patient portal from my doctor and saw that it was super low. And so, of course, I went inside crying to my parents because I was pretty upset about how low it was, because I knew what that meant. I knew that I was going to have a much more difficult time having children than most people would. Their results were actually flagged as being super low. There are also women who've been able to get pregnant off an AMH of 0.01. So there is always hope and nothing's impossible. Now, I personally think hormones are pretty cool, how they make our body perform a variety of functions every second of every day. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you next time. Bye. My LH, what was it? AMH fluctuates. My luteinizing hormone, reproductive endocrinologist, reproductive endocrinologist.